Hello, everybody, and welcome to Virtual Trek Con with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
How are you? We're also joined by Erin Macdonald, Mary Chieffo, Mohamed Noor, and Aliza Pearl. How's everybody doing?
Hey, great.
2 thumbs up.
Yes, Maj, as we would say in Klingon.
Nice. Sirach, I cut you off. How are you, by the way?
I'm doing good. I'm
Awesome.
doing all right.
Great. So this panel is a fan to pro panel where we talk about people that have been lifelong Star Trek fans, and it has either influenced, guided, or been a major part of their work and their lives and their careers. Would you like to tell us about yourselves a little bit? We'll start with Mr. Mohamed Noor.
Sure. My name is Mohamed Noor. I'm a professor at Duke. I'm a professor at Duke University. I've been a fan. You want like a really brief intro, or do you want like a elaborated thing?
Let's give it 30 seconds.
30 seconds. So Trek-wise, I mean, I've been giving talks at conventions for a couple of years now. I've written a book on depictions of genetics and evolution in Star Trek, and very recently I was taken on as an occasional science consultant for Star Trek episodes for the current series. So that's been very exciting. And I've been incorporating Star Trek into my classes at Duke University.
Awesome. What about you, Erin Macdonald?
So I have a PhD in astrophysics. I left academia to get into more teaching and outreach, and started doing science consulting for the entertainment industry. So I teach science through popular culture on live streams and at sci-fi conventions. And then just this past year, I was made the science consultant for the Star Trek franchise. So that's my full-time job now.
Okay.
Pretty awesome job too, by the way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Aliza?
Hello, I'm Aliza Pearl. I am an actor, writer, and content creator, and also improviser. And that plays in very closely with my Star Trek work too. I helped co-create, co-produce, and co-direct a stage show called The Improvised Generation, which is a bunch of professional actors and lifelong Trekkies who create improvised stories from scratch with Star Trek, like in the Star Trek universe. We've been doing that for 5 years now, which is kind of wild to think about. And I also do RPG gaming, and a lot of it has been sci-fi and specifically Star Trek focused. So right now I'm co-producing and also a part of the cast of an all Klingon Star Trek Adventures game from ODYSY, who are the official creators of Star Trek Adventures tabletop RPG system.
Awesome. Wow. Miss Mary Chieffo, I'm not really sure if you need to introduce yourself. I think we kind of know who you are, but go ahead anyway, I guess.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm just like beaming looking at all these incredible humans. I love what Star Trek does and brings to the world. So yes, I am Mary Chieffo. I'm gonna bust it out. L'Rell.
Nice.
Yeah, busted.
Love it.
Wow.
I mean, I was saying I got this at a Starbase Indie last year from the Klingon Language Institute. They had this as part of their photo booth and let me keep it. So another testament to the beauty of the community that we have. But yes, I play Chancellor L'Rell on Star Trek Discovery in seasons 1 and 2. And that's how you say it in Klingon. Dish. They have a little bit more of a sh with the S sounds, which is one of my favorite things to throw.
It's Discovery.
You know, actually, something I heard about the Klingon language, and maybe you can dispel this myth or confirm it. I heard a long time ago that they don't have an E sound. They just have an I sound. So it's not Klingon, it's like Klingon. Is that right?
Yeah, there's, they only have one sound per vowel. I don't think I have the dictionary. I wish I had that. I could just pass. I had all my Klingon stuff just roll out. I do have the Klingon way with me.
Nice.
But yes, they have, for every vowel, there's just one particular sound, which was part of when I developed my English speaking dialect with Rhea Nolan, our dialect coach. I basically created a dialect sheet, like I would if I were doing an Irish accent, but based off of the sounds that are in the Klingon dictionary. So that particularly L'Rell's story of being completely in the Klingon culture up until that point, while she was fluent in English, she still had the reverberations of the sounds that her Klingon language
created. So it's really fun, and I highly recommend looking at the Klingon dictionary. It's just
confusing.
It's a lot. Yeah, Kalish, as Shazad would say, Kalish. That's a very particular way. But yes, but that's me, and I think out of everyone here probably came into Star Trek as a fan late. I'm the latest to the game, but then went full throttle. I had loved the franchise before I was cast, but it wasn't until I was cast that I really did the deep dive into all of the different series with obviously a Klingon focus. But since then, I've just fallen in love with all the shows, particularly Deep Space Nine.
Nice. That was the follow-up question right there.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's true, and I was just watching the episode where I was watching some Grilka episodes, but then the follow-up where Jake goes down and witnesses war with the journaling, and it's such an impactful episode, so moving, and your performance is so beautiful. So I wanted to geek out a little bit. But that's, it's been such a gift that Trek has become more and more a part of my life as I've gotten older.
Sirach, you remember we just did the first Grilka episode with the House of Quark, when Quark gets married.
Yes.
Love that episode.
So good. It's
Hilarious.
so good. And Mary Kay, what is it? Why I always forget her last name, who plays Grilka, just does such a great, Mary Kay Adams, there we go. Great job. She's like my favorite female Klingon. Like every time, she just like owns the sexiness and the power. Wonderful.
Nice.
She does, and she's the first person that left Quark's like speechless.
Yeah.
He's used to being the alpha male, right? And he finally found somebody more alpha than him. He got sunned.
So fun. Yeah. So fun.
I did want to kind of go around and talk about everybody's fandom at first. Like Mary, you already kind of opened that up for us a bit. What was the first Star Trek series you watched, Mary?
For me, my first intro was actually the 2009 reboot film. I had been aware of Trek before then, and I'm a huge sci-fi fantasy fan in general, but it was not the thing I grew up with as much as other franchises. And then I got totally hooked because I was just like, the chemistry of the cast and the stories in space, blah, blah, blah. And then my dad was like, okay, well, let's watch the original, mainly the films with the original cast, and then of course watched some episodes here and there of TOS, and was again had seen perhaps on TV some of the TNG episodes, was aware, but it truly wasn't until I was doing the Klingon centric, and then I watched in chronological order from Enterprise onward every Klingon centric episode. So that was my intro to all. I'm an overachiever, and I'm proud of it. But it was great. I mean, it was extremely informative, and particularly in Deep Space Nine, there's so many wonderful Klingon episodes that really go into the history and lore, and I got totally sucked in and just fell in love with all the characters outside of the Klingon ones. And actually did just watch most of Deep Space Nine because I got so sucked into the plot. By the end, I was like,
happens.
I watched the whole thing. But yeah, that's my general origin story with all that.
That's amazing. Just really just sucked in all of the Klingon knowledge.
Hopefully. That's retained as much as I could.
Aliza, what about you? Next Generation?
Yes. Well, it's kind of, I'm not sure exactly which was first, but TNG and TOS were definitely the first that I saw as a child. And TOS was like late night reruns mostly. And then TNG, I remember watching that as a kid at my aunt and uncle's house, and we would spend the summers with them in Miami, and they were very crunchy hippie vegan, and they were like, no media, no TV
Sounds
shows.
like my people right there.
Yeah.
Except the only thing we were allowed to watch in their house was Star Trek.
Cool.
We would just like watch Star Trek in their house and eat soy dogs and things like that.
Sounds like my Saturday night, right?
You would have loved it. You should meet my aunt and uncle. They would love you. But yeah, that was my introduction to Star Trek as a kid, and and I think my dad was also super into Voyager when that came out. I didn't watch that very much with him, but I think he had a crush on Seven of Nine. That's why he likes it.
Yeah.
But yeah, my story is not also, it's also not like a very linear fandom story, because as a kid I was into Star Trek and I was into sci-fi and opera and all these, I just had like lots of big ideas and stuff. And then when I became an actor professionally after college, I kind of like retreated into following what I thought I should do as an actor, like being, just like learning what I needed to learn and being in classes and stuff. And I kind of lost kind of my own sense of who I was and my interests. And so after several years of this and feeling kind of like I was spinning my wheels in my acting career, I just was like, well, what do I like? What do I want to like spend my brain energy on right now to make me feel good? And I was like, well, I've always loved space and sci-fi. And I decided to just start going to like events with community people who are like into NASA, like NASA events, JPL. Since I'm in Southern California, it's like right, in our backyard. And then I started going to Star Trek fan events, and I started watching Star Trek chronologically, as much as possible chronologically. And that's when I got re-hooked on Star Trek, and my creativity also got unlocked. I started writing again. I started really realizing what types of characters I want to play as an actor, and like what's really in my wheelhouse. What can I stretch to become? And Star Trek just like completely got me back on track creatively and professionally.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, that's great. Star Trek like inspires so many people, and there's so many stories of people that say, I wanted to become a writer because of Star Trek. I wanted to become let me guess, Mohamed and Erin, a scientist because of Star Trek, What about you, Mohamed? How did you get your start in Star Trek fandom?
So I've got a lot of gray in my beard, so I started a little earlier. Back in the late 70s, I was watching repeats of Star Trek. I wasn't alive when it originally aired, but I was watching the original series then in repeats in the 70s. And I remember even like when the premiere for Next Generation came on, I remember being all ready and like got my parents in the room like, we're going to watch this. I can't wait. There's going to be more Star Trek. I was very into it right off the bat. And then basically all the other series, I've just been following them as they came out. I've just been watching them as they came out and been very excited for each one. Now, when I was working on my book, I actually did a deep dive and went through all 700 some episodes in like a 1 year period. That was intense, but I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything as I was going through the book. And, I thought about just doing like searches and things like that through the scripts, but the problem is sometimes the right word isn't used in terms of the science concepts. So I actually just went through either the script or the episode for every single one then. So that was intense. I need to take a short break after that.
A short break?
Sure.
Oh, that is intense.
That's a lot of TV.
Yes. Erin Macdonald, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of came into it a little bit later too, kind of like what Mary was saying, but I loved sci-fi, I loved action, but I didn't grow up with Star Trek. My family wasn't, I didn't really have that around. But when I went to college, when I was doing my undergrad, I was studying physics and mathematics. And I've joked about this before, but in the Venn diagram of Star Trek fans and physicists, there's like a big overlap. And literally like the physics parties have always had TNG on in the background, and it would always devolve into like drinking games of, Picard adjusting his shirt and making it and have drink. Those were like my first introductions. But then actually the night we all graduated with our undergrad degrees was the same night that the 2009 film premiered. And so we literally like went from our graduation, like did our obligatory dinners with family and stuff, and then all changed into Star Trek uniforms and went to the midnight premiere. And that was my first exposure to like in-person fandom, because I'd always been a fan of various franchises and things growing up, but that was the first time where I'd never been to really a convention or anything like that, and it was just like, oh, this is my scene. These are people. And only a couple weeks later, I actually moved to Scotland to do my PhD. So it was like I graduated, had this incredible experience, went and got a tattoo, like I was, totally responsible, and then moved to Scotland, and I didn't know anyone there. And I was just like, well, now that I'm like riding this Star Trek high, let's just go and watch everything. And being sort of off in a new country without knowing anyone as a woman pursuing this, hard science PhD, I really got attached to Captain Janeway and Voyager. And that kind of kept me going through those darker days of my PhD. But then that drove me to meet more people. And I ended up meeting a lot of friends and colleagues in graduate school because of Star Trek, because I wouldn't shut up about it. And then I would naturally other Star Trek fans. And really, it's meant a lot to me over the years. And
you dedicated your dissertation to her, right?
I did. Yeah, I wrote in my thesis at the end of like my acknowledgments, I said, finally to Captain Janeway, like I'll never be able to explain how much she got me through the darkest days of my PhD. And I did get to meet Kate Mulgrew and I didn't like ambush her, but I kind of
You kind of did.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
She's, signing all these things. I was literally a guest at a convention like 6 years later when I started doing this professionally, and she was a guest as well. And I just stood in line between my panels and had my thesis and said, here's my PhD dissertation, which is that thick, and do you mind signing my acknowledgement? And she was kind of like, whoa. That's a thing. but she was fabulous. And yeah, I think Mary and I were kind of talking a little bit too about how we've all met each other through Star Trek, through our love of Star Trek. So
absolutely.
Yeah, that's I'm just going to piggyback, which is everyone's favorite term. That actually in my class in school, we said that so much that we actually had to vow never to say it again, because everyone's starting to yes and each other, and they're like, you're not saying that. Anyway, but to go off of what Erin was saying, we met at my first convention. Bowie Kim connected us, who's one of our great writers on Discovery, and she's like, I think you guys would click, and she was very right.
Very right.
Yeah. But
real quick, just speaking of that very first convention, I think it was maybe 3 years ago that you were at, Mary. I do remember seeing you. You were the person, the new Star Trek Discovery person, that was brave enough to walk into the vendor's room and just stand there and say, here I am, guys. Come say hello. And I was like, that's a brave lady. That's not going to last long. Most people, they just got to go and hide off into their corners. But you were like, you know what? I'm going to embrace this thing. I don't mind being, the face for now, like walking in, just saying, hey, you want to know what the new show's about? You want to meet somebody? Here I am. I'm happy to meet you. It was brave. It was very open. You seemed very friendly. You seemed very, supportive of the fandom and very eager to, give that love back. Was that the thought process behind it, or were you just lost?
No, that definitely was. Yeah. And that first Vegas convention before the show had even aired, it was a wild, surreal time that whole year, because we started rehearsals that January in Toronto. And then because of scheduling, we were starting to promote the show while still filming. We had the premiere and we were still filming the last 2 episodes of the show. So that was Vegas, that was August. So again, still in the thick of it. And it worked out that I wasn't filming for that full week and a half. So I even requested, we were only supposed to be there for that Wednesday. It was me and Ken Mitchell and Wilson Cruz and Sam Bartholomew. So we were the 4 reps that could make it to Vegas to just be like, it's going to be great, guys. And I think certainly on the Klingon side of things, because I had done all this research and knew that, people weren't sure how we were going to really tell their story, I really wanted to be able to be an advocate for, what I was doing, at least as the actor. You have so little control as the actor, but I wanted to make it clear to the fans that I really cared about about the storytelling, about the Klingons and representing them well. So that was definitely, I mean, and not in just like, haha, I did my work, as in like, I get why you're passionate. I am one of you. I am someone who cares deeply about the stories that they tell, and always had that, you know, dream that the actors and creators involved with the franchises and shows I loved cared about it as much as I did. So being provided with that opportunity was so humbling and exciting. So yeah, I mean, we had that first panel in the giant hall. And from that point on, I think, yeah, that pretty much, you know, moments after we'd finished that panel, we went into the vendor's room and just, you know, soaked it in. And then for those next 5 days, I knew that I wouldn't have that level of experience of being able to walk around as much as I did ever again. And even then I had to have a handler with me, just because people, once the panel had happened, they started to be like, oh, right, that's the Klingon lady. And like, so I'm just so grateful that I really was able to have that full experience those 5 days. And you know, Vegas has become such a staple of the year. The subsequent 2 years were, you know, each year had a different reverberation, but I'll always remember that first moment of really getting to meet so many fans. And you know, they threw me and I helped judge the costume contest, and like, because I was around, they're like, oh yeah, do that thing, and I was like, great. But I'm a very yes and type person, and so it was wonderful, and totally, you know, the conventions are one of, if not the most, my most favorite part of being a part of the franchise now, because it's about connecting with people who really love the stories and the characters, and celebrating them. Yeah,
definitely my favorite.
I feel the same way. Yeah, I feel the same way, and that's one of the things when I first met you, Mary. I was thinking, these are the new guys on the new Star Trek, and they're, you know, you guys were kind of looking around like, okay, so what do we do next? And you know, it's still new. And I remember my feelings when I was still new in there and looking over at the, you know, Shatners and Patrick Stewarts of the business. So I knew that you're going to be in this convention world for a whole long time, right? It's like, this is the beginning of a long journey. And that's the beautiful thing about Star Trek, is that, you know, it's the beginning. It's always the beginning of a journey once you embrace the family and the fandom. It's like opens the door for like a whole world of friendships and experiences and traveling and, you know, conversations, and that's the beauty of, I think, to me, is of the fandom. It's just so much there to offer for almost any kind of a person.
Well, and I think too, just when you were talking about that, it reminded me, you know, because I met Mary through the conventions. I met Mohamed through conventions. And then Mary was like, hey, Erin, we're both in LA. Do you want to go see my friend Aliza's like Star Trek improv show? So that's how I met Aliza, through Mary. And even just being at the improv show, I mean, because Aliza, you've met like tons of fans, you know, through that.
Yeah, they have such a strong community that comes every week and watches us on YouTube. And that's I mean, Aliza approached me. Our first intro was at the season 1 premiere. And you interviewed me on the carpet, and then approached me at the after party. And as I like to say, Aliza is this luminous, gorgeous, clearly intelligent woman, and she came up to me and said, we talked and and gave me her info, and I could just sense the deep, wonderful, moral human being that she was. And I was like, yes. And then, you know, eventually we got coffee, and then she invited me to see TIG. And as a consequence, I've gotten to know the Improv studio in general, Ripley Improv, this amazing all-female group she's a part of. And like, so much of my life now is a consequence of the yes and of the Star Trek world. So I'm just, so moved by that. And and Erin and I have had many a wonderful evening where we've gone to see one of the shows.
These two are like are some of like our favorite fans, and also like, your laughs are so distinctive in the audience. It feels really good to like make you laugh because we can hear you.
Yeah.
Like it's really good.
Yeah.
But just echoing everything that you both just said. I've met so many wonderful people through Star Trek and through pursuing my own fandom and marrying my fandom with my my life as an improviser and as an actor and as a writer. Sirach, I actually met you. I don't know if you remember me.
I remember you.
You remember me?
I
I'm
remember you.
surprised you remember.
I remember you. I don't remember where we met, but I could never forget a beautiful face like yours.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I can tell you where we met because I remember. I was at STLV like 2018 maybe, and I was dressed as Guinan in a yellow outfit with the
Oh, yes.
That
Yes.
was me.
Yes.
Yeah,
Now
and I
it's
came over
coming.
to your table and I was like, "Hi."
And I was literally about to say, I know you cosplay. I know you
Yeah.
do the cosplay thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you were dressed as Guinan and you were like looking radiant and just like on point with
thank
your
you.
outfit. I loved it.
Mhm. Yeah.
I
Thank
remember
you.
now. I do
I
remember.
think that was
Absolutely.
also, I don't remember if that was, I think that might have been the same day that I was like very overwhelmed because Nichelle Nichols was like right over there, and I like did a loop first because I was like, I can't talk to her yet, I'm too nervous. And then I found you, and I was like, oh hi, I can talk to him.
Yeah, I was the
Sirach's
warm-up.
okay. You can handle Sirach.
That was the warm up, you know.
You
Right.
seemed like, you know, like you were
Yeah.
just chilling, just sitting, and
Yeah.
you know, Nichelle Nichols just like legendary status. You're a legend too in your own right.
Well, not yet. You know, it takes a while. Yeah, it takes maturity and time. There's a 25-year limit on legendary.
There you go. There you go.
They still got more
Yeah.
time.
There
Yeah.
you go.
We grow into our legacies. Yes.
But you know, one thing I want to highlight though is one thing I see in you and Mary and Erin is really strong, independent women that are about their business and successful. And I think that's one thing that Star Trek allows for is for, you know, female empowerment and for you to go out there and do what you have to do and seize the moment. And the opportunities are there, especially within this culture, because it's so intellectual, and it's not the culture of, you know, holding on to these old past traditions and you know, male chauvinism and the patriarchy of society that we live under. And I think that's one thing that I really admire about all of you is that, you know, you've seized the day and went out and just became who you wanted to become. And I think that's just an awesome thing.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I will say, there is something baked into Star Trek. I think because it, at its core, you know, has that optimism of like there being equality for everyone. When you watch that, when you like just soak that in, that's gonna inform a lot of how you operate in the world, even if you're not like consciously realize that that's what's happening. And even if you're surrounded by a society, which, you know, we all are, a society where that's not the case. I think as Star Trek fans, we like want better and expect better from society because we love Star Trek. Because we're like, look, we could be like that. Let's do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't you want to be like that, you guys? Come on.
Yeah.
Don't you want
Let's do
transporters?
this.
Yeah. Totally.
We did want to talk about, and we keep touching on it, Aliza, but tell us a little bit more about your improv work that you do, because you and Mohamed do something where you are working with Star Trek just through your own fandom and through, you know, what you already wanted to create on your own, you know, your own content. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I already mentioned the Improvised Generation, which we do as a standalone stage show. We're very tiny, but we're mighty, and we have a wonderful community of fans, Star Trek fans, and also now the Improvised Generation fans, which is incredible and wonderful. And so since then, I've also evolved into doing tabletop RPG content. And so at first, I used to work for Nerdist, which is why I was on the red carpet interviewing Mary a few years ago. And I also worked for Geek and Sundry, which is their sister company,
that's cool.
doing gaming. I was basically like a gaming host and played RPG characters in long-term campaigns. So the first one that I did was called Shield of Tomorrow, and that was a Starfleet crew playing a Star Trek Adventures game. And we did that for a year. And so that was like, we were using the Modiphius system, which is a Star Trek licensee for the Star Trek Adventures system, creating Star Trek content that's not canon, and it's kind of in this weird in-between place because it's not, it's sort of, it's still professional level production, but it's not like Star Trek official content. So I've been in this like kind of fun gray area for a while now. And now, we've like graduated from Geek and Sundry, and our group is now creating, there's another campaign called Clear Skies that's currently running, and that's a Starfleet crew playing Star Trek Adventures. And now next Monday, or I guess when this airs, it will have already premiered, but we will have premiered Blood of the Void, which is an all Klingon version of the Star Trek Adventures game. So yeah, and also we wanted, so me and the game master, Eric Campbell, who is the game master for Clear Skies and for Shield of Tomorrow, when we were creating the Klingon show and deciding what direction to go in, we had two objectives. One was we wanted it to be a diverse table. We wanted it actually to be like all people of color. And number two, we also wanted to like show the diversity of Klingons. And because they're so like Klingons are so fleshed out that really the only direction to go in is like, well, what about the weird Klingons that you don't know about?
Yeah.
So we have Klingons who were raised as like my character was actually from the farming caste, and then decided to like buck the trends of staying on the farm her whole life and become a commander of a KDF ship. And we have other characters who grew up like hunting, so like in the woods. We have characters who are like political strategists and who aren't like, we're not just warriors. We are bringing like the other layers of personhood to Klingon characters. So yeah, that's Blood of the Void. And again, we're working with licensees, and it feels good to get to share in like creating Star Trek stories while also just watching Star Trek stories and getting to like, play Star Trek online and see the new Klingon. I don't know if any of you are into that, but like the new Klingon stories in Star Trek Online are dope and amazing. And we hope to like incorporate those into our stories if possible. So it's really nice to be in this place of a fan creating professional content, but like kind of adjacent to the official canon.
Star Trek Online's doing amazing things. I mean, I don't play it, but everything that they're talking about, everybody can everybody's constantly talking about all the great stuff that's going in it. There's a great tribute to Aaron Eisenberg and their Nog, and we're always hearing great things about it.
Yeah, I'm actually going to start streaming it soon on my Twitch. I'm super excited. Yeah.
Somebody's Twitch.
We'll include that link in the description box.
Oh yes, I will.
Yeah. Nice.
So Mohamed, tell us about the coolest book ever written, by the way.
That wouldn't be mine. No, just kidding.
The Bible?
So the book was, yeah, right?
Yes, the coolest book.
So my book was actually an outcome of talks I've been giving at conventions. So like Dr. Erin, I've been giving talks at conventions for a couple of years on science, basically trying to teach science concepts, but using Star Trek or other sorts of science fiction to try to engage people in it. So, one big talk I give fairly regularly is on basically evidence for evolution or on various genetics topics, things like that. I've been doing that at conventions for a while. A publisher, Princeton University Press, reached out to me and asked me if I'd be interested in writing some sort of outreach book. And I said, I have an idea. It's a little bit non-standard because this is an academic press. So they're used to textbooky kind of things. So some outreach books too. I ran this by them and they're like, yeah, let's give it a shot. And it was really, really fun putting it together. Just, going through, like I said, that year of watching all the episodes, trying to extract things from it. But importantly, it's not trying to explain Star Trek. It really is a science outreach book. So it actually mirrors in coverage exactly what I cover in my introductory biology classes at Duke, but just pulls examples from Star Trek and say, here's how this was depicted once. Let's talk about the real science and let's see how good this actually is depicted in the episode. So basically it's just using it to create a narrative. So after making the book, then I actually taught a class at Duke called Genetics, Evolution, Star Trek.
So cool.
It was really, really fun. I was nervous because like a bunch of college kids, I'm not sure how many of them have even seen any Star Trek. And most of them had not seen anything beyond, say, the reboot movies. And this was right around the time Discovery had just come out. So there hadn't been an opportunity yet for that. They were totally into it. I mean, they really engaged. So we'd watch parts of episodes or sometimes even whole episodes. And then I'd say, all right, let's talk about the science. And we'd really break it down and talk about like how this really works. And they got the same topics that we teach in the introductory class. So that's been really fun doing that. And recently I just spun that off, little pieces from it, into a YouTube series called BioTrekkie Explains. I'm kind of copying Dr. Erin too. She has a lot of really cool video content too. So copying
she does.
her.
And we're going to include both of those in the description box below as well. And the two of you, with what you're doing, is you're basically at this point inspiring, young minds to go into science and to like Star Trek, which is cool. Kind of like when you were younger and you were inspired to go into science and go to Star Trek. Do you feel, Mohamed and Erin, after that, that there's ever a moment where you can see you're making somebody change their mind, or you can? I know, Mohamed, you're teaching in front of students at Duke. Do you ever see that aha moment where something clicks? And
definitely,
that's just got to be the best feeling.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Something. I'll let Erin speak first.
I was just going to say, like what's really fun is doing, for me, because I don't teach in a classroom anymore. And that was the hardest part for me about leaving academia, was I love teaching.
What were you teaching?
I taught, because I was a researcher, but as part of my duties as an employee of the university, I had to teach classes, and the astronomy 101 and physics 101 are always the hot potatoes that no one wants to touch, because they're hard to teach. And a lot of people have been immersed, the PhDs and the professors have been immersed in their field for so long that it's so hard to step back without using like massive, difficult differential calculus to explain, how why planets go around the sun. And, but I really like that, without being too humble. I'm really good at the introductory stuff, and that I can see, because I wasn't naturally good at math, I feel like I can teach it without requiring that, that's not my only way of communicating. And the best way for me to teach these difficult topics is to tie it to science fiction, because that is a reference point that a lot of these students get. And particularly with astronomy, we can't really do this stuff in a lab. And you can say like, look up, and the stars doing that, but it's really because we're rotating, and like the sun sets, but we're moving. And like a lot of it is conceptually difficult. But if you're able to just be like, all right, you see this Star Trek episode? It's like that. People start to get that. And that is really, really exciting. It's fun.
Dr. Erin also has an audiobook that's fantastic called The Science Fiction. It's on Audible. Yeah,
The Science of Science Fiction?
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. And it's a really, kind of like Mohamed's book, this one it's an audio only, it's Audible original, but it's kind of all my talks mostly on like gravity, space-time, and all of that stuff, how we see that in science fiction, just with a ton of examples in there. But what's been so nice too, though, and I think Mary might have been going down this road, but the support from Star Trek, of seeing how much people do love the science. And in fact, one of the first talks that Mohamed and I gave together at Dragon Con, the Discovery cast crashed in secret. They sat in the back. My partner smuggled them all in because they legitimately wanted to learn and wanted to watch the talk. And then Ken Mitchell gave them all up at the very end.
Wow.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Did any of them raise their hand and say, "Are spore drives a thing? Is that even possible?"
Yeah, Ken raised his hand, and I was like, "Well, this is it." And so we called on him, and he asked Mohamed a biology question about dehydration under pressurized masks.
It was so good, because everyone, like, being in from the back, you just saw everyone's head go boom. Like, they were like, "Oh my god!" And yeah, it was me and Ken and Jane That was a great moment. And yeah, that definitely was the rabbit hole I was starting to go down, but I really just wanted to shout out both Mohamed and Erin for their talks. And when I first met Erin at
Starfest Denver.
Starfest. I know there's so many. It's like star stuff, lots of star stuff conventions.
Yeah.
And just I was able to come to some of her talk, like with scheduling and stuff. Often we're always like strangers in the night because I'm going to this panel, you're doing your talk. But I did get to see part of it, and I really love. I mean, like as much like Erin is one of my best friends, but also now, I mean, at the time I was just meeting her for the first time, and just the personality that she brings to the talks, and having all of her badass geeky tattoos, and just being so passionate, and as a very deeply enthusiastic, passionate person, I was definitely sitting there going like, oh, yep, this is going to work out. This is going to be. But I think that's so important. I think enthusiasm is something that is often made fun of or put down because people are afraid to fully express themselves. And something I appreciate about the core Trek community, whether it be on Twitter or in person at these conventions, is a celebration of enthusiasm. And, of course, there's always some naysayers, but for the most part, the majority is so about that positivity and that uplifting of each other, and celebrating that we all have our own fandom, that we all love it for different reasons and in different ways. And that's so fine. Yeah. But tying into just watching Erin that first time, and henceforth is seeing, the other women in the room who also have a cool geeky tattoo and like got the cool red hair, whatever it is. And I know for you talk about with both Janeway and Scully, like that, I will never stop talking about how representation is so important. And I'm so thrilled too. I haven't even said this to you yet, Aliza, that that your Klingon or TTRPG, there we go, I said it, is so diversified, or this new term that I'm really coming to love and embrace, normalized, because that's really, that's what it is. It is not that is the world. And I think it's so important that those voices are seen and heard, and that the representation behind the scenes is happening as much as it is on screen. Because that, it's a testament when with fan created content, it's coming directly from the fan who has their own experience, who loves the show as it has been told, but has their own unique perspective. And that's what I love seeing with the science, the fact that you get to consult the science in the show. It's like coming from people that actually care about the show, and it creates a great yes and environment where you're like, I want the show to be great. I don't want to just tell you that you didn't get the science perfectly. I want to be like, okay, great. That's a really cool idea. How do we make that work thematically and scientifically? So I just really celebrate that and love that, and love that I've been able to have a window into that. As a fan, I get to see more of the cogs and wheels than I normally would. So
And I'm not sure we talk enough about Star Trek and diversity and inclusion and normalization. And so, like, we have Serac, and we have, our few Black Trek actors that we like hold on to. And back then, especially because there were so few, there was so little representation everywhere else. And Star Trek also provided a place where people of color could come and see themselves reflected in the future. And that's huge. That's so huge. The reason I got so hooked on Guinan was because when I was doing my like rewatch, or a lot of it was first watch, but like rewatch of TNG and TOS, and then watching all the other series, I got hooked on Guinan because I realized, like, I got to see this woman as a kid. Like, Whoopi Goldberg stepped up and said, I want to be on this show. I want to be a part of history. And she created a space for herself. And that's literally like what I've had to do to feel empowered in my own career. And so the blueprint is there, I think, for everyone. Everyone can find some type of like empowerment by like diving into why you like Star Trek. Even just asking yourself that question can like help you hone in on how to empower yourself in your life. That's so powerful. So powerful.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. And imagery is so important for the future generations. They need to be able to see themselves on screen and see themselves, projected in a positive way. That's one of the things that really plagues the Black community. Is there's a lot of negative imagery in our community with the music and the videos and movies, and they always portray us in these kind of stereotypical boxes. And it's important for people out there to say, oh, well, there's other options out there for me. I can be an intelligent person. I can be an articulate person. I can carry myself with grace. I don't have to be, showing my body or doing things in the way that are derogatory or negative. I can represent a positive image. And even though the characters are flawed, they still are doing their overall trying to do the best. They're trying to make it work. They're trying to figure out their differences. They're trying to work together as a team. And, those are the important themes that Star Trek leaves us all with.
Yeah. On our show, Sirach and I do talk about that theme a lot, where, 28 years ago, seeing an African-American father and an African-American son, and how they were such a model of good parenting, it's really important back then. I do think it's cool, Aliza, that you mentioned basically that Whoopi Goldberg and Guinan did to you or for you what Nichelle did for her, however many years ago that was. So hopefully 20 or 30 years from now, somebody will be saying, and then I saw Aliza Pearl and I knew.
Oh,
Exactly.
I can only hope to have that kind of impact. And Sirach, going back to what you said about just having other options, seeing other options. Another thing that I think, so I was like, 80s to 90s kid. And so in the 90s, we had this like beautiful array of Black shows on the WB. And I didn't realize at the time how special that was, because then it went away. And we had another like decade and a half where there wasn't very much representation for Black people on TV, like main primetime TV or mainstream TV, I should say. And so it's about quantity. It's also about quality, but it's also about like diversity within. So for instance, within Black representation, we are not a monolith. There's so much diversity within Blackness. And like my family is probably like culturally different from Sirach's. And, we have so many different, like, but also a lot of similarities. Like, so I am just super excited I want to contribute to that and just like keep showing Black people and all forms of life in different iterations in genre. Because for me, genre and sci-fi and fantasy are the ways that people can imagine and kind of access a better future and different options and different ideas.
Yeah, Avery used to call it the wonder of possibilities. And that's what we
I can hear that in his voice.
Yeah,
Me
right?
too, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. It's the possibilities, the wonder of it, and we can play with it and make it what we want and tailor make it. And I think it's important as the legacy of Star Trek continues, and there are going to be more shows, and there will be plenty more series to come, that they stay true to those things that help motivate all of us to want to be better, to want to achieve, or to want to get into the sciences, or learn about acting as a craft, or learn about making stage plays, and whatever it is. There's so many offshoots that just allow for us to grow as a community.
Well, the infinite diversity and infinite combinations. The work is never done. That's the tragic beauty of it. And not tragic. It's empowering really and motivating. Is that we are always striving for more. And that's something I've really come to appreciate about the franchise as a whole, is that we do have these ideals. And Erin and I talked about this the other week with the redemption episodes. about how with Klingons, and I'm sure Aliza in your rewatching and research, that we're striving for honor, we're striving for things, but we're not attaining it fully either. You know, that the politics are convoluted, and obviously Klingon's empire is, you know, quite far away from where the Federation is, and the Federation still struggles. But I think that even though it is more of a utopian future, there is still striving for greater understanding. And yeah, maybe it's the humbling aspect of it, is that there will always be more room for more compassion and understanding, and just listening, which I think is a huge topic being talked about right now, is that just the ability to listen and learn, and ask questions when appropriate. Like I just feel that is so what Trek is about. And so that's something that people really can and should be looking to now as we continue to try and move towards that future.
Yeah.
So friends, we just have a couple minutes left here, but I did want to throw out one more question I think would be really fun to dive into. Maybe it's a two-part question. I would be like the guys at the Star Trek conventions that say, I have a 7-part question. You know? And then you're like, oh, great.
It's going to be a long one.
Yeah, sorry about that. My little nerd heart beats strongly in here.
I love it.
Number one is, what above all has Star Trek inspired in you? Like, whatever it's be kind to people, or whether it's to go into education. And the other part is, considering your work within Star Trek and what you do and everything that is influenced by Star Trek, what do you hope to inspire in others? We're going to start with Mohamed Noor, because he's already thought about this 1,000 times.
Something like, I hope I'm not first. Oh, shoot.
All right, I'll start with Sirach then.
That was funny because, Mohamed, I was thinking of how your students feel when you call on them.
Now you know what it's like.
Now I feel it.
Yeah, there it is. You know, for me, it's about the family, and that's what I've been inspired by. You know, it's just the family. And for me, coming up during that particular time in my life, my family was splitting. My parents were divorcing, and I needed that father figure. And Avery really stepped in at the exact right moment and picked up exactly where I needed him to be as far as guidance and, you know, helping me go through my maturation process. So that's what I get out of it, is family. And that's what I hope people will be inspired by, is to have respect for family, to love your family, to get to know your family. And I look at it like the whole community is a family. It's not just me and the Ciscos, you know. I look at it like it's the whole collection of us that have this same common interest, and that's the family. And we can talk things out, we can debate things, we can, you know, argue our points of view, but at the end of the day, you still love that person, and you still, you know, honor the fact that you guys are family, and that's what's important for me.
Nice.
Great answer.
Mohamed, did we buy you enough time?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
I was trying to think of an overarching answer. And I mean, all the things that you guys were talking about just recently in the context of diversity and representation, those are huge. I was trying to think of something that catches that and other aspects. And I think a big part of what I really love about Star Trek is forcing you to think about things that you take for granted in a fundamentally different way. And it feels like that's what a lot of the writing in Star Trek is. It's something that you might be familiar with, but it's twisted. It's twisted in this different sort of way that you're not used to thinking about it. And it forces you to reconsider like your assumptions. And I mean, that I've actually found very, very intellectually stimulating as I'm watching Star Trek episodes. Like, wow, I've never thought about this problem in this particular way, because it's turning things on their head a little bit sometimes. And sometimes it's in the context of politics, sometimes in the context of sociology, sometimes it's the context of science. But I love that. I think that's just fantastic. And I don't think anything I produce will exactly do that, but my hope is that some of the content that I produce will help people as they try to think about things in a different way as it's presented in Star Trek. They'll then understand it a little better. Like, oh, okay, if it's not this and it's this way, let me change my framework to fit that, specifically in the context for me, in the context of the science. But I'm hoping they'll take that in all the areas, particularly in the context of diversity, inclusivity, and things like that too.
God, I wish you were my teacher when I was.
yeah.
You're very kind. Thank you.
Aliza, what about you?
First, what was the second part of the question? Because I forgot that.
First part is what, above all, has Star Trek inspired in you? And the second part is what do you hope to inspire in others in your Star Trek related work?
Okay.
I think that's what it's
yeah.
close to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I heard.
Couldn't remember the second
Thank
half.
goodness.
Then. Yeah. So for me, I think, the Guinan story for me, creating my own space and taking up space, and that I love space. Ha ha ha! Fun there. but yeah, like it really did. Star Trek gave me permission to fully be myself, and I don't think anything else could have done that in that same way. And what I hope others are inspired by my contributions to Star Trek. Wow, that's hard to answer. I guess I want people to have more empathy, and to I want us to like open our minds more to different possibilities of being. And if I can infuse that into my work and into my fandom and into my own things that I create, then that would be great.
Awesome.
Nice.
Mary, before we ask you, I did want to point out that you're the first person we've ever spoken to that's used the term henceforth, by the way. So congratulations to that.
Yes.
That was pretty cool. I don't think you got away with it without us noticing that you said henceforth.
Academic at heart.
Yes, this will be my legacy. Oh, that brings me such joy. And I feel like very Klingon of me. That would and henceforth. But I almost that is like the mother's speech. But no, from this point forth. That's how I said it. But close. I want to make a little badge for myself. I said henceforth at the Virtual Trek Con. I'm glad that got me in a laughing, because I am very, very moved by everyone's answers. And so, here we go. I feel that, what speaking specifically and now being involved directly in the storytelling, I think what that has inspired in me, I did, growing up realize, I need to be the role model I want to see. That while I could graft characters I was seeing to fit certain, I have my Ripley, I have my, whatever it was. But I realized, no one is quite like me. And I want to be able to put that full self out there. And I think this is in line with pretty much what everyone's been saying, is that if I can be the fullest version of myself, hopefully that can inspire others to do the same. And it's not about them trying to replicate what I'm doing. It's about being like, great, that person is standing in her own power. I want to do the same. So that's actually kind of more of the second half of that question. But I think being a part of the show, and because L'Rell is such a strong and flawed character, I mean, to be able to give empathy to a female character who is trying to learn. Like I like to view her as a very strong example of the type of person we need in the world, who is someone who has a very strong belief based off of their own experiences, but is, through her own experiences we see on the show, grows and changes and listens and learns, and as a consequence becomes a true leader, because she's willing to see both sides, even if she doesn't completely agree with how the Federation conducts itself or whatnot. And she's having to shed an entire lifetime of propaganda and presumptions about who the Federation is in order to have diplomatic relations with them. So yeah, I think I just synthesized your two questions together, but just to be able to represent a character who has that level of nuance has inspired me to henceforth, do that in other work. Tie it back in there. But, this has been an incredible experience to do it. Like I said, this is I don't know if I said this out right, but, my first big job being out of school, and I learned so much about what happens on set, behind the scenes. I've learned how I want to be a better creator and tell the stories I want to tell. And I hope in 10 years' time, I'm talking about the production company that I've created that is able to give voice to others, both similar and very different from mine. I had a friend ask me that recently, like, where you see yourself? And I was like, that's really what I keep seeing, is like, yes, I love acting, and yes, I want to keep creating my own content, but to be able to bring people together and give voice to people who have in the past been marginalized or minoritized for whatever reason. So it's really inspired me to just be a part of that movement, full throttle, and vocalize and be active within the Trek community and elsewhere. So,
when you create this company that takes over the world in a wonderful way, and they say, so are you the CEO? Are you going to say, no, I'm the mother? Or are you going to say, no, I'm the chief? Those are your two.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I think I'm the chief mother. I'm the chief mother chancellor.
Chancellor. Throw them all in there.
I'm the chief mother chancellor. Yeah. I think, I'll just have it'll be like Emperor Georgiou's title. It just keeps going.
Yes.
I'm the chief mother chancellor, CEO, runner of dancing and other things. I will,
use letters, CMC, chief mother chancellor.
Yeah. Oh, look at that.
CMC Music Factory. Nice. Okay. Thank you. Erin, before we get to you, there was one specific thing also that you said that made me perk up, was that you said Scotland like a Scottish person. You were like, oh, yeah, blah, 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 and I went to Scotland. And you went right back into it. I don't know if that was on purpose or what.
No, it sneaks out occasionally. I lived in Glasgow for for almost 4 years, and the UK in total for 5. And Glasgow's probably the most. I love Glasgow. My soul is in Glasgow. I have met. Like, my mom gets confused when she goes to Glasgow because she just sees copies of me walking around everywhere. Scottish at heart. But it's not English, it's not another language, it's just the most crazy dialect, and so my brain translates when I'm in that mode, and if I'm with other Glaswegians, and especially if there is drinking involved, the Glasgow, it'll be every, I'll be like, yeah, all right, okay, no, so, not really. But again, kind of like what Mary said, I'm glad that you made me laugh, because I was starting to get emotional thinking about my answer to this. Because I think for me, my journey with Star Trek has kind of been in 2 parts at this stage, is that as a fan and coming up in a career in the sciences, I had Captain Janeway, and what Janeway taught me was how to be a leader, and kind of a little bit how Aliza talked about, Guinan and Whoopi Goldberg, particularly carving out her own space. What I got for me personally from Janeway was how to take charge and how to command a room and how to be confident in your decisions and take responsibility for the decisions you make. And I don't know why that character in particular spoke to me so much, but it really did. And I carried her through. I'm like a one-woman career panel for an astrophysics degree. I've done everything you can do with an astrophysics degree. But as I was a senior engineer leading a team, and there was a lot of time, there were a lot of people older than me. It was not a diverse crowd at all. I was the most unrepresented person there, and or underrepresented person there. And it was hard. It was really, really tough. And when my parents finally, once I got a job with Star Trek, they finally watched an episode of Star Trek. And so I made them watch Voyager, and my mom called me immediately afterwards. She was like, I think I get you now. Because of how much I've shaped my career and my interactions with people based on this character. But then moving into the professional space of Star Trek, I think what it's given me, and this is what I started to get really emotional about, is the family, you know, that, and Sarek said that too, that we're all, I know all of these people here because of Star Trek, but we all are genuinely friends, and you build this community, and it's like, whether in the professional setting or in the professional fan setting at, you know, the conventions or the amazing stuff that Aliza does, we're all Star Trek fans, and that brings us all together, and it's such a unique beast. But at the same time, when you meet other Star Trek fans, you do have that bond. And even if it's like mine is Janeway, someone else's might be, you know, Kira Nerys or something, we still have our characters and we understand what that means to us. And I think that that's so important. And what I hope my contributions to Star Trek, other than some awesome technobabble that I can work into, I think especially at the fan-facing side of the work that I do, being in front of fans and teaching science through Star Trek, I just hope that I can pass on the license to be authentically yourself. Because I think that's what I've struggled with so much in my life, was feeling like I had to, okay, well, I'm getting a PhD in astrophysics, so I'm going to be a professor. And that little voice was like, but I don't want to be a professor. And then,
That's so bad.
And getting all the jobs and figuring out what I wanted to do. Yeah. Mohamed, you were a superstar. But, you know, and all these jobs, I never found where my soul and where my heart was. And I ended up having to take so many risks to just, because I wasn't giving up on, I knew there would be something out there for me. And then finding that, and then Star Trek, you know, like Mary, it's kind of our first big jobs in this industry. Having that be our first break is like,
yeah.
But I have found my love and I have found my passion. And so even though it's a little bit later and there's been a lot of false starts, finding my voice through writing and finding my voice in the entertainment industry and finding my love and my passion, all I hope to pass on to people is that it's okay to have those false starts, and just don't give up that authentic, genuine self that you are, because there is a place for you, even if you have to carve it out yourself. It takes not giving up. And that's what's so important.
Star Trek is lucky to have you and all you guys here, incling Ryan too. I mean,
even Ryan?
I know. I didn't even pay you anything.
Answer the question. That's why I said even
Ryan. That is,
yeah.
Thank you for asking that question, though.
Yeah, it's a great question.
And it
you
is.
guys bring a lot of passion to all of your answers. So we had a feeling that you might have some pretty good answers for that question. But yeah. To echo Mohamed's sentiments, Star Trek is very lucky to have you guys. We're very lucky to have, you know, what Sirach and Avery brought 28 years ago, led by Ira back in the day. And we're very happy that you guys are carrying the torch for us. And to however far you want to go, take it for decades. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Henceforth.
Yeah. I don't even really know what that means. I guess it means later, you know, from here on out.
I'm just gonna keep saying
Yes.
anytime I see you now.
Yes, henceforth.
I love
Chief
it.
Mother.
Thank you. Yes, Chief Mother.
Chief Mother Chancellor.
You can't say that.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
I love it.
Well, thanks very much, guys. This has been awesome, as we suspected it would be. And special thanks to Mary for coming up with this panel idea. That's all her.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Nice.
I'm
Yes.
so thrilled and humbled to know all of you. It's really such a gift.
It's been a really gift. And you know what? This is the gift that Aaron Eisenberg gave us. This platform to be able to get together and share these stories and just, you know, grow this friendship. You know, that's our legend, our living legend guy that's always going to be with us in spirit. So thank all of you. Thank all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping it going.
Yeah, as we'd say in Klingon, katlo, which is thank you.
Katlo. I just learned that.
And I'm going to try.
Oh, I love that. There you go.
Great.
Nice.
Well, everything that we mentioned, we will include in the description box below. So everybody that's watching, if anything sounded interesting, probably all of it, just go down there. And definitely, I mean, obviously check out Discovery, check out Aliza's awesome improv and the Klingon stuff that I'm still not even really sure. I'm not a game guy, so I really, it's also confusing to me, but it sounds so
I'll
awesome.
talk you through it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please do.
Yeah.
Thank you. I need it.
Yeah.
And Erin and Mohammed's got the books and his new podcast. Erin's got the videos. Both of them are science advisors. It's just, you guys are doing so many cool things for us, for the Star Trek world. We'll have all that in the description box below. And everybody at home, thank you very much. We'll see you on the next one. What? By the way, what should be a good closing thing that we say? Should we be like,
Virtual Trek Con?